With the Toronto Maple Leafs now eliminated from the Stanley Cup Playoffs, GM Brad Treliving has a busy offseason ahead. We're going to talk about potential signings, re-signings, and trades all coming up on this episode of Hattrick HQ. But before we get into it, we got to say to the thousands of you watching these videos that aren't subscribed to the channel, if you're looking for your daily dose of NHL content, you found the right place here at Hattrick HQ, so you don't want to miss out on anything happening around the hockey world. Make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button. But with that said, let's go right into the main topic of the video today, which is Brad Treliving has a busy offseason ahead. And yes, if we take a look at the Leafs contracts for the end of the season, obviously we have Bertuzzi and Domi being UFAs. We have Connor Dewar being an RFA. We have Nick Robertson being an RFA, and Noah Gregor being an RFA as well. And if we take a look at the defense, we have TJ Brody, who's a UFA. We have Timothy Liljegren, who is a RFA. We have Joel Edmondson, who is a UFA, Gio, who's a UFA, and Labushkin, who's a UFA as well. And if we look at the goalies, obviously Martin Jones and Ilya Samsonov are both UFAs as well. And if we look at the roster kind of without bringing anybody back, this is what it looks like. I'm not really going to go through the entire lineup, but I just want to say you're looking for a top line left wing, you're looking for a fourth line left wing, a top right D, and a third line left D, and a backup goalie for Joseph Woll. And if we look at the prospect pool for the Leafs, obviously notable names here. We have Fraser Minton, Easton Cowan, Nikita Grabyankin, who they just signed from the K. They also have Tapi Niemela, who has been playing great with the Marlies this season. They have Dennis Hildeby, who's a guy who could potentially be a backup next year. He's been playing great with the Marlies as well. And there's a whole list here, so if you want to look through that, you definitely can pause the video and have a look at that. Another name there is Cade Weber, a guy who we talked about a lot here on the channel earlier this year. But if we go through their draft picks, what they're working with this offseason, they have a first-round pick for this year, then a fourth, 3 fifths, and 2 sevenths. And if we look at next year, they don't have a pick till the 5th round. They have a 5th, 6th, and 7th. Then in 2026, they have a 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. And if we look at some of the top 25 UFAs as of this moment, you guys can pause the video and look at this as well. Obviously, at the top there, we have Steven Stamkos. We have a bunch of kind of older D-men on there as well. We have Jake Gensel, Adam Henrique, Victor Olofsson, a bunch of these guys, Elias Lindholm, Jonathan Marchessault, just a bunch of wingers, centers, and D-men here. If you want to pause and look at them all, you definitely can, because these are some potential options that Brad Treliving is going to be dealing with here come this offseason. But Griff, I got to throw it to you here. I mean, obviously, as a Flames fan, you know Brad Treliving, you know what he wants, you know what he does as a GM. What do you think he's going to do with this Toronto team over this offseason?
Well, there's no denying he has his plate full this offseason. He came into Toronto knowing that, look, they're kind of a mess and have been sort of thing. Kyle Dubas did not give him the best team. He didn't inherit, he inherited a good team, just not the best kind of project, I guess we can say, a big puzzle to fix. And after another first round exit, I mean, it just grows for him. Now, Leafs fans, I want to just warn you, Brad Treliving, he's not the smartest man around here in Calgary. He's kind of called Boston Pizza Jr., and it's not for good reason. The absolute pepperonis he slides around. But he's so apt to making interesting trades, and we've seen it in the past. Just from a Calgary perspective, look, he traded away Matthew Tkachuk, and what happened? He became an absolute star, was a Hart candidate last year, made it all the way to the Cup final, and was sensational. And what did he get back? Well, he got Jonathan Huberdeau and signed him to a ridiculous contract that is the worst contract in the NHL. So if I'm a Leafs fan, I'm worried slightly that, he might do something foolish, because we know the Leafs are going to blow up that core four. If he trades, someone away and then tries to get someone really good back that can fill out the roster spot that is missed, watch out for the contracts. That's all I'm going to say. I know the Leafs haven't had the best cap space over the years. With Brad Treliving, I'm sure he'll be smarter this time around. I hope he has learned from, his mistakes, we can call them, in Calgary. And hopefully he can really make a good decision here, but it will be super, super tough. What are your thoughts, Pi?
With that, the biggest thing is I want him to almost take a route of like Pierre-Luc Dubois being traded from Winnipeg. We've seen him go to the Kings. The Jets got back two very good middle six, top six guys that obviously didn't make the impact of them winning the first round, but they did make the impact through the entire year. I know we've seen Brad recently, like you said, trade Huberdeau. Well, get Huberdeau for a guy like Matthew Tkachuk. I think in his mind, he was like, hey, we want the top end talent. We want as much as we can get. But I think the biggest thing is filling out these gaps within the team. I mean, when you really look at that, you have the star power. You have a guy like Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, and let's use Marner as an example. If he gets moved out, you can bring back guys like Max Domi, but you really need to fill this depth out. It's felt like 40 years that the Toronto Maple Leafs never have that middle six scoring or bottom six scoring at all. I mean, David Camp, I think, was the fifth highest, the sixth highest in recent memory of Leafs scoring, and it was 4 goals in like the past 25 or 26 playoff games. So they really need to add more scoring. I mean, we've seen it this series, they could not get a goal. We've seen the top guys kind of fade out. The bottom six didn't really step up when needed. I think guys like Max Domi could fit perfectly on this bottom six. But the biggest thing is trying to get the value in bunches instead of going out and being like, hey, let's trade Mitch Marner for a sign and trade for Steven Stamkos. Because obviously, if you overpay an older guy, it's not going to work. I mean, you've seen it with Jonathan Huberdeau. Obviously, he had an outstanding year. Didn't work out too much. And Casey, what's your thoughts on this whole matter?
Yeah, I think Brad's really going to try to make a big splash here come the free agency because obviously they have young guys coming up like Minton and Cowan who could definitely crack this roster coming out of training camp. So maybe utilizing them into the bottom six and trying to sign a top tier left wing in free agency, throw, back the Brinks truck for him, as Pi would say. I think that is probably something we will see because I think it's not the goal scoring that they're missing. Obviously, they have the best goal scorer in the league with Austin Matthews. They have William Nylander, who had a 40-goal season this year, was really clutch in the playoffs for them. So I think maybe getting that kind of two-way kind of left wing, like a playmaker and a goal scorer, could really help out this Leafs team in that sense. I also expect him to add the West Coast vibe to this team like he did last year. I expect Max Domi to definitely come back. I really do expect he will get signed for a multi-year deal. I also do think he's going to add some big defensemen to throw back there on the blue line like he did at the trade deadline and just kind of start this team like he wanted it to be from trade deadline on, just started at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, no, that's the biggest thing. And like, I have a list in front of me of what Brad Treliving added to this team. Like I said, Griff, I know that this Brad Treliving doesn't make the best signings. I know he overpays for a lot of people, but guys that he brought in: Max Domi, Tyler Bertuzzi, Ryan Reeves, Connor Dewar, Noah Gregor, Joel Edmondson, Simon Benoit, and a guy like Ilya Labushkin were some of the biggest standouts on this team. I mean, obviously, like I said before in other videos, Klingberg wasn't the best signing, but a guy like that would have really benefited this Leafs team just having the extra power of offense coming from the defense. Obviously, he shored up the defense by adding in a lot of bargain bin guys that actually turned out extremely well. So it's going to be nice. And Griff, just what your thoughts on what to expect? Do you think a guy like Zadorov's definitely going to be on the Leafs radar? Maybe Chris Tanev?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you listed a couple former Flames there. I think that could definitely be the case. Treliving has proven that, he's comfortable being in a situation where he has players he knows. Look at TJ Brody and Mark Giordano, both Leafs this year. I know they didn't play in the playoffs really. Did Brody go in for one game maybe? But either way, I think he would be comfortable bringing in players he does know. I mean, Chris Tanev should certainly be on any team's roster that's a contender. He's an absolutely phenomenal player. So when it comes to free agency, picking up a good D-man, I think is essential for the Leafs because a lot of hockey fans, Leafs fans especially, will complain about the goaltending of the Leafs. Look at the past few games in the playoffs. The goaltenders were great. And I personally think a goaltender is just the final product of how good your defensive core is. So if your D is really, really good, your goalie's going to be better. There will be less pressure. So maybe they don't fully need a goalie. They do need a defenseman. I think Tanev should be honestly number one on the Leafs radar if they do end up not trading away anyone from the core four. I think if they do trade someone away from the core four, either look at a replacement within that trade or look for a good forward through free agency. But no matter what, I think Tanev should be on the Leafs radar.
I definitely agree with you, Mark. I think that they adding more of these defensive type defensemen is key because we've seen how good McCabe and Benoit was for this team in the playoffs. They were physical, they were blocking shots, and they were really helping the goalie out in this series. And I think adding a third pairing of just that, another McCabe-Benoit line, would really help this team out for the future. And another thing that I really think that they are going to go for here is a big offensive defenseman. Like me and Mark talked about in a previous video, we feel like if they had that top tier offensive guy who could quarterback a power play, this could really help this team out. And that's what he tried to do by bringing in Klingberg. Unfortunately, he was injured and that never played out. But I do expect him to go after this type of player again. And it'll be interesting to see what he does here this offseason, because obviously the goaltending situation is kind of up in the air as well. We do expect that Joseph Woll will be the starter next season, but will they bring up a guy from the minors, or will they get a vet backup goalie? What are your thoughts on that, Pi?
With that, I think definitely get a veteran goaltender just to bring in mentor Wall a little bit. A guy that can step in, especially if we see Wall maybe go down with another injury, or if he starts to kind of fizzle a bit or needs someone to get more starts since he's not the oldest and most veteran goaltender. I think getting the backup goalie is perfect. I think you give the reins to Wall, though. I think this is his team. He's proven this in the games he's played this year. He is the goalie of the future. When it comes to the defenseman, I definitely agree. You need to go up and pick up a guy that can quarterback a power play. I think Riley has been good, but I think he's almost too vocalized on, hey, we need you to be a shutdown defenseman, and we also need you to create offense. So maybe going out, picking up a guy that can be a shutdown right pairing defenseman for him, let him focus on the offensive end. This is a defenseman that scored 20 goals once in the NHL. He's a guy that can create offense, but I do think you need maybe a bottom pairing specialist guy that will put up points. I think Tyson Barrie's a free agent, but I don't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole. And when it comes to the forwards, you have guys like Max Domi that if he's not brought back, I will burn my Leafs jersey. This guy bleeds blue. He does everything for this team. Max Domi is top priority on this list of players that are on free agency for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But kind of talking about filling out the rest of this team, if you trade out a guy like Mitch Marner or John Tavares, whatever it might be, you need that middle six depth scoring. I can't just talk about this enough. We've seen a guy like Matthew Knies come in and look like an outstanding forward. He looked like their best forward the entire series. Yes, Nylander scored goals. Yes, he was leading the team in points. But Matthew Knies played the full 60 minutes of hard forward checking, defensive responsibility, back checking, whatever it was. This guy was a maniac on the ice in a good way. They need more players that are going to fight with their heart and soul. Max Domi being one. Tyler Bertuzzi deserves another chance. Connor Dewar's a guy I want back no matter what. These guys fight for their spot, and I can't say the same for a lot of these guys. So if you move someone out, you need the passion. You need what burns in this team to make them take game sevens every single game and want to win them all.
Yeah, I think one thing that is very interesting here is that you guys say this is Woll's team. Morgan Riley is really, really good, but maybe can't quarterback a power play. As the regional Flames expert here on Hat-Trick HQ, how about a mock trade here? I really like Morgan Riley, but he's proven maybe he can't fully quarterback a power play. We saw how bad the Leafs power play was in the playoffs. And Woll is great, maybe not quite yet ready to take on, 50 plus games, but let's say he splits it. And let's talk about a trade with Calgary. So let's say the Leafs do blow up that core four and either Marner or Nylander gets traded to the Flames. The Flames can send back Rasmus Anderson, who is more than capable of quarterbacking a power play. And you can take on Jacob Markstrom as well, who could be the perfect mentor for Woll. Now, the big thing here, of course, would be there needs to be some sort of salary retention, probably from the Flames' side. So that means it's probably not just either Marner or Nylander going. Maybe one of those prospects, not one of the best ones, but maybe, a Topi Niemela or someone like that. And let's say a trade like that does happen, then the Leafs absolutely should re-sign Domi and Bertuzzi as well, but maybe look at a scoring forward as well in free agency. I want to know your thoughts on a mock trade like that.
Yeah, like the big thing is you look at this team. I think Markstrom would be an awesome goaltender coming in. Like you said, the mentor for Wall would be incredible. We've seen Markstrom help the Canucks make the playoffs, help the Flames. This is a guy that has the leadership. We've seen so many teams in on him. There's a reason everyone was in on him. He's a goaltender everyone wants. Bringing him and Wall in, I think, would definitely be an upgrade. And I'm not hating on Samsonov. He did have good games as a Leaf, but bringing in a more steady sounded goalie is definitely the right go. And with Rasmus Anderson, I think this guy is excellent. I love his play. Watching the Flames games, he's someone that stands out to me on every possession, offensively, defensively. Getting this type of player in, and especially if you're moving out, just say Marner for two of these guys, maybe you move out a prospect, like you said, maybe it's a pick, whatever it might be, it helps Calgary get to the point of, hey, we want to contend. We still have a decent team. Let's bring in a guy in his middle 20s to kind of late 20s and a guy like Mitch Marner. It helps us contend now, and the Leafs kind of show up the points that they don't really have the strongest points at.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of really like this trade proposal that you put through, Mark. I think that, like Mark just said, Rasmus Anderson is a great defenseman, and the Calgary Flames are kind of going into a little rebuild right now. So maybe getting, a couple top tier prospects for their future could be the right option for them. And I think that it's a very solid trade. It's going to be interesting to see what Treliving does here with this core four, if even if they want to move, because they're all on a new no move clause. So they could get a deal done where maybe they're sending Marner to Calgary and Marner's like, I'm not going to Calgary. So then it just falls through. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the core four. We kind of talked about it in a previous video, and it'll all come down on the back of if the player wants to leave Toronto or not. And I suspect that a lot of these players don't. I think they're a really close-knit group, and I think that they really all want to get it done together and just prove everybody that the core four can get it done. I just think maybe with a fresh coach behind the bench, a few key acquisitions that this Toronto Maple Leafs team could get it done. But we want to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section. What do you think? Do you like a Rasmus Anderson trade to Toronto? Because I know a lot of you guys would. What do you think Brad Treliving's going to do? Who you think they're going to sign? Let us know down below in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. But we're going to get into everybody's favorite topic here, which is comment of the day. And the comment of the day today goes to John. John says 20,823 days since Toronto won the Cup. And I mean, that is just sad to see there. I mean, 20,000 days. I mean, that's a long time, but it is coming. We said this year that this was the year, and guess what? It wasn't. So maybe next year's the year. We're going to start going for next year. But yeah, appreciate the comment. Appreciate seeing all your guys' comments down below. And like I said, make sure to leave a comment on this video. You might be featured on the next comment of the day. And if you want to check out a video we did earlier today, it'll be popping up on your screen right now. But as always, I've been your host, KC, alongside my co-hosts, Mark Griffith and Mark Pye. We'll catch you in the next one.